Power Talks. Welcome to Power Talks. I'm Beth Ann and Melody Cedarstrom. We're having a little phone issue. She'll be with us shortly as soon as we get that all figured out. But we're here to bring you the truth and empower you with truth. It was a sad weekend with the rioting and the deaths that went on in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I can't help but think, where on earth are people's heads, you know? Where are they? What are they possibly thinking? Not just this violence, but those in the feminist movement and the left, they have such a seed of hate within them. Now, I know that they're screaming about the white supremacy, and I hate that. I hate the white supremacists, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But Ashley Judd goes on a tear. What does a bad day look like for you? Well, a bad day for Ashley Judd is when somebody calls her sweetheart. Somebody called her sweetheart, and somebody told her she had a nice outfit. And she goes ballistic. This was on Friday, I do believe. She goes absolutely ballistic over a man calling her sweetheart with a car. By people who think that they are above someone else. They have this sick ideology that one race is superior to another. And that's not what America is about. Well, what is bringing on this violence in America? What is in the heads of these feminists that they don't want somebody opening a door for them. They don't want somebody calling them sweetheart. They find it offensive. They don't want somebody telling them to have a nice outfit. You know, I got my hair fixed last week. I would have loved somebody to tell me my hair looked nice. It's just that these women are nuts. I mean, she got up and read this horrible, nasty, vulgar poem when they had the Women's March to protest President Donald Trump, and were proudly calling themselves nasty women. But don't call her sweetheart, and don't tell her she's got a nice outfit or she's going to go ballistic. What does a bad day look like for you? What does a bad day look like for you? Melody, do we have you yet?
Yes, and that's what a bad day is when my it's when my Skype doesn't work. That's a bad day.
That is a bad day. But don't you think that just puts this in perspective, that Judd goes off on this tyrant, you know, on this about somebody calling her sweetheart. She reports him trying to get him fired. And the very next day we have this violence break out in Charlottesville, Virginia, because one race thinks they're better than the other. And there was both sides there, and both sides were there for fight. And the ACLU confirmed that the police were told to stand down. And they didn't get involved until it got deadly. And then they got involved. And it's just, I don't know, I just have a hard time wrapping my head around that.
You know, I mean, at this point I wouldn't call it a false flag, but I certainly would say that a lot of it is by design, and I believe they allowed it to happen. I mean, if you go back to the real reason that they were supposed to be there, to me, it's, you know, I mean, it was about
That's ridiculous
a statue. It was about our history. And, you know, the poor, pardon?
I have an article that talks a little bit about that. Go on and say what you were going to say. I apologize.
That's all right, but,
for interrupting
you know, don't let it happen again, Beth. No. Interrupt me any time that you like, because many times I probably need to be interrupted. I mean, I do not approve of, but this whole thing is just so out of control. And a lot of it is all media provoked. A lot of it is, you can go back in our history from, you know, taking our history lessons out of school. For these young people, they really don't know what they're protesting about. You know, people do have a right to protest. These young people, they don't understand. They're just following what they're being conditioned to believe. They've been so brainwashed. And agreed with you, the police stand down is the same thing that happened in Baltimore. Stand down. Why?
Yes.
I mean, the president of the University of Virginia, he should resign. Or she should resign. It's like it was like these, it was selectively provocative in their decisions to make sure that something was going to happen. You can't tell me they didn't know, you know, considering the tenseness that we have seen in this country over the past several years. And it's, you know, divide and conquer. I do believe a lot of this is planned, a lot of it is designed. This is what their goal is. And I think this was probably maybe not the final straw, but really very close to the final straw.
Well, this article that I have is from the Foundation for Economic Education. They have some really good stuff there, FEE. And this writer, his name is Jeffrey Tucker. And I'm not going to read the entire article, but he talks about the statue myth. He said much of the media coverage over the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, report that this alone began with a dispute over the fate of a statue of the Civil War Confederate General Robert Lee that sits downtown. The city council voted to take it down. The protesters want it to remain as a symbol of white pride and rule, which is absurd because, he says, General Lee would have been thoroughly repulsed by the ideology these people represent. In actual fact, the dispute over this statue is a complete distraction from the real motivation here. And he says the real motivation, an explosive expression of an idea that has been brewing in the malevolent movement that has been gaining steam for a very long time. After the Second World War, most people imagined that Nazi ideology was gone from the earth and that only real totalitarian view that remained to threaten liberty was communism. And that might have been true, he said, for decades. But matters began to change back in the 1990s as a new violent strains of statism began to arise. And I want to inject right here before we go on with this conversation. The left, the Democrats, protect, idealize, admire Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who was a very well-known white supremacist. And they talk about having a confused ideology. And I don't know where these white supremacists ended up getting called the alternate right. When did that become the right? Who makes up who's right and left anyway? It's just,
the media is lumping it all together.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. And it's... You know, I watched it several times this weekend. I try not to watch the news too much, but I turned it on every once in a while because I wanted to see if Kim Il-sung was doing anything. And because he had threatened to make a test this weekend, which he did not, and I'm certain that he did not because of the tough talk that the president was making. But then I saw this that happened in Virginia. And, you know, your heart just sinks because you can see it's going to continue. It's going to go on. Now, the Department of Justice is going to do an investigation of it. And I would just love, because the white supremacists that came in there, they came from out of state, which tells you they don't have a huge group following. They're not like a massive army. There's just a few of them, and if there's one or two, there's too many. But it's going to happen. Seattle is getting geared up for such a thing, and they did have a permit to protest. The white supremacists had a permit to protest. The other ones there to meet them did not have a permit, and that doesn't matter here nor there. It was just a point to make that they did get permission to come in there. And the police knew that, and they had the stand down order, and it just is, it's telltale that They want violence in this nation. And that's disheartening.
It really is. But again, we're back to the divide and conquer. I mean, if you look and see, this nation, my gosh, if you blink wrong anymore, it's to the point where, you're categorized, you're put into into a group, and you're right. The alternative right is being, proclaimed as, white supremacists, and they're lumping us all together. And it's, what's amazing though is, the Democrats, they're so out there, as you said, they're all out there, crying against Nazism, communism, and so forth. But yet look how we've embraced trade with China, which is a communist nation. And it just baffles me.
Let's back up here. Let's back up, because they keep yelling and screaming about Donald Trump talking too tough to North Korea, and then they were angry because he didn't talk tough enough, and he didn't name this white supremacist group, and he didn't name the other group, which they didn't want him to name. And then they went off. I saw some of these left mainstream media. They went off on him. He took forever to denounce what's the guy's name? The KKK guy that in the campaign that
David Duke.
Thank you, David Duke. But Hillary Clinton, her campaign was endorsed by the Communist Party, and I did. Nobody in the mainstream media ever mentioned that. And I don't recall hearing them on Fox mention that.
Bernie Sanders
Party endorsed.
Bernie Sanders, a self-proclaimed socialist, and he's embraced by the youth of this country because the youth are not being taught what is right and what is wrong. They're being taught by the agenda to destroy this country. And this poor young woman, that got killed. She was there because of quote-unquote social injustice. Are you kidding me? A description, and God bless her. She was there and doing, and not to take anything away. And I hope the guy that ran, to me, the book should be thrown at him, go to court, and get the death penalty as far as I'm concerned. But on the other hand, these young kids are being taught. Pardon?
I think they're only giving him a second. Yeah. Go ahead.
These young kids are not being taught properly, and they're so influenced, by what's on the internet, by what's on what they find, and it's a sad situation. I'm at loss at words. I truly am at the loss of words. He was only 20 years old. He is only 20 years old. Yeah. And he thinks that he stands above someone else, everyone else, and the girl he killed was white. So, it's, and there was others that passed away. The article I have here, I think that 3 have been fatal in that incident now. It's not an incident. I don't like that word. That's what the King called the Boston Massacre. It was an incident. We're going into a break. We're going to open up the phone lines. I'm throwing out this. What does a bad day look like to you? Is it because somebody calls you sweetheart or opens the door for you? Or is it when this nation falls apart because of crazy crime? 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. And Melody and Beth Down with Power Talks. We'll be right back.
Hear it first on FirstAmendmentRadio.com and FirstAmendmentRadio.net.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
And we have returned. You're listening to Power Talks. We're having Skype problems today. We connect through Skype, and we're having some serious Skype problems. They say I'm all garbled, and we can't get Melody to stay connected. So we're going to keep trying. I wanted to throw out that phone number one more time. I just thought it was absurd and such a telling thing with the media and with the left side of no common sense, I guess we just have to say, when Judd goes off on her tangent about somebody calling her sweetheart and that she had a nice outfit because that's just uncalled for. And so she had a bad day. And then the next day, we lose lives and have injuries over crazy rioting that should never, ever happen in Charlottesville, Virginia. It should never, ever happen in America. Do we have Melody yet?
Yes, I'm here.
No, we don't have Melody. Oh,
yes,
there you
I'm
are.
Here.
Oh,
yes.
I thought I was all alone. I have an article here. I'm going to throw that out one more time for the listeners. What was a bad day look like for you? Is it when somebody calls you a sweetheart? What does a bad day look like for you? 717-300-1218. I had a bad day one day, and I came home and I didn't have a home. My house burned down. And that's a bad day. Somebody calling me sweetheart and telling me I have a pretty dress on, that's not a bad day. That's not a bad day at all. And I know that there are some men that mean something when they say that. This guy, he was just being nice. She's a star. Does she want people not to recognize her? Or maybe he didn't recognize her. Maybe that's what it was all about. But I think we have bigger issues in this nation besides worrying about whether or not Miss Judd was called a sweetheart or had a nice dress on. It just, the craziness and the lack of common sense and the fact that she has no life. If that's her biggest problem, I'm feeling pretty sorry for her. Not.
Well, I also like to listen to hear.
Did you have a good weekend? I never did.
I would also like to hear from the listeners. I'd also like to hear from the listeners their view about, if they have any thoughts about what happened this weekend in Virginia. And so make sure you give us a call because we'd like to hear from you also. But I also wanted to say.
300-1218. Go ahead.
This is difficulty today. Difficulty Mondays. We have Comedy Tuesday. This is Difficulty Monday.
I should have saved Judd for Tuesday.
Yeah, really.
And we've got, I think there's a delay with the phone line and the Skype, so we're having a little trouble here. Go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Well, I often like to bring, things that have happened in history. And today, August 14th, President Ford signed a bill allowing American citizens to buy and sell gold after December 31st, and that was the first time in 40 years. Removal of the ban was part of legislation that also authorized $1.5 billion for the International Development Association, an agency of the World Bank. So you can see, the main reason that they took us off gold and allowed us to add gold again. And, it's all about globalism. The funds for the IDA are to be provided in 4 annual installments. Removal of the 40-year-old ban on gold ownership had originally been opposed by the Treasury. So the Treasury didn't want you to own gold, which believed it would encourage speculation in the gold markets and, in effect, the international monetary situation. So they were more concerned about the international monetary situation than they cared about you owning gold. But it is true, it did encourage, some speculation, and, the market in gold, they try to tout it as a commodity, and they certainly take advantage of that way to trade in order to help manipulate the prices of gold and silver. But the Treasury did relent in its opposition that year. The bill gave President Ford authority to end the ban before December 31st if he reports to Congress that private ownership of gold would not harm the international monetary system or the United States. Pressure in Congress to end the ban had grown in recent years because many Americans wanted to buy gold as a means of offsetting inflation. So a lot of Americans knew back in the 70s why they needed to buy gold and silver, and it hasn't changed. It is a way to offset inflation. They want inflation, and even when they banned gold in 1933, it was a way so they could create inflation, because inflation allows them, they needed the weaker dollar. They needed a weaker currency because they needed to go into debt, and there's no difference today. They need a weaker currency. We've got a weaker currency. The dollar has lost, 95% of its value, and they only have a little ways to go. And so we will see inflation in this country. That hasn't changed. So it is important to make sure you hedge your portfolios with gold and silver. So we're running a little special at Discount Gold and Silver Trading today. It's a small little package. It's a very popular package where you get a small piece of gold, a 1/10 ounce American Gold Eagle, along with 20 American Silver Eagles, and they are 1 ounce. It includes all your shipping costs for $565. $565 for this great little package. And you just need to call 1-800-375-4188. That's 1-800-375-4188. And make sure you tell the folks at Discount Gold and Silver that you're calling about the special that you heard on Power Talks. Power Talks. So
that's a great special, Melody. That's fantastic.
Really
we're chasing all kinds of distractions. Go ahead.
It is a nice little package, and they can also visit the website at Discount Gold and Silver at dgscoins.com, dgscoins.com. And we do have a weekly newsletter that goes out. You can sign up for it. There's a little mailbox there. Just tap on it and fill in your information. You will receive your first newsletter later on today. So make sure you get to the website, dgscoins.com.
Now, your newsletter, is that weekly or monthly? That's weekly, isn't it?
That is weekly.
Or is it monthly?
It is weekly.
I thought it was. That's a lot of work. Well, this article that I have here from the Daily Signal is talking about that they need bold leadership in national debt cut. They're not going to cut the national debt just because of what you said right here. They're not going to. But I found it interesting how they worded this. We are facing the largest, most predictable crisis in U.S. history, and almost nobody is talking about it. And this is coming from the Deputy Director of Economic Policies at the Heritage Foundation. She says we need a bold leadership. The numbers are really terrifying, and they just go on and on about it. It says a senior fellow of the Manhattan Institute said of the mounting debt that is nearly $20 trillion, and counting. It's going up and up and up, and they're talking about the personal debt here too. Of course, you and I have talked about that as well. Nobody's talking about this. So we're talking about North Korea. We're talking about, Miss Judd. We're talking about violence in Charlottesville, Virginia, and across this nation because of Civil War monuments that really do not represent what they think they represent. And, it's hard for me to understand where we all are in our heads that we can't see that forest. We're looking at a tree here and a tree there, being distracted by things, which is, I believe, like you said, is by design. It's designed to distract us. They're using the weakness of people. And yes, it's a weakness to think that you're the only race that's got any kind of worth. That is a weakness. That's a insecurity if you think that that's that one race or the other stands above another one. And I don't care what color you are. It's wrong. Then they go after the president for what he says, and it doesn't really matter what he says. It ain't going to be right with the mainstream media. So he has come out with a little stronger talk this morning and named names, and the Department of Justice is going to investigate this. But when are we going to make right for our economics? When are we going to get rid of that debt, which is just absolutely killing this nation? When are they going to do that? I don't think they're going to. I don't think they want to.
There certainly are a lot of distractions floating around, and I believe a lot of them are done by intent. And I do believe something will happen in order to cover up the fact that we do have this huge problem with our monetary policy and the amount of debt that we carry. So as long as everything else is going on, no one talks about it. And certainly as long as people are lulled into conversations and people are getting angry and hate, it's just amazing how people treat one another anymore, how you can't have conversations with people anymore. People are not, if you don't think one way, then you're wrong. If you don't think their way, you're wrong. And they just don't allow you to talk. They talk over you, they yell at you, they scream at you, and it's like one side is not allowed to have their own thought anymore. I mean, our thoughts are being, are trying to be controlled. And when you have the media that certainly is one-sided, it doesn't take a lot to influence the masses, the mass population. And this is what we're seeing. These people are being so brainwashed. I have a book. I don't know. I have it on my desk here. I just recently purchased it, so I haven't had a chance to. It's called The Snapping of the American Mind. It's by David Kupulin. And I can read the title better than I can his name. But he's done several books, The Marketing of Evil and How Evil Works. But this one was particularly about the snapping of the American mind. And it will become on my number. I'm going to move it up to the first book to finish reading, considering where we're at today. And, I could do a little bit of as I go along. But it is very interesting to see how half the population is on drugs. The other half, I read an article just recently, the amount of alcohol that is being consumed. You have states that are legalizing marijuana. You have half the population or more that's on some sort of Prozac or depression pill. We talk about health, our physical health, but I have to question our mental health in this country anymore. And
we watch these commercials every night. They go on and on about drugs of this kind or that kind to, by the time you're done watching those commercials, you have an ailment. you feel like you're sick. And they encourage the drug use. That goes back to the pharmaceutical industry, and Big Pharma has big bucks in D.C. with our D.C. occupiers occupying offices and cutting deals. And it's the reason they did not, and probably, well, they may have to do something. They're in a little bit of trouble. But it's the reason they did not repeal Obamacare, because they received big money from the pharmaceutical industry who's pushing this. And, of course, they get approved by the FDA. The drugs get approved by the FDA, and the next thing you know, a few years later, they've taken them back off the market because somebody died or it causes some kind of ailment or whatever, And it's a racket that's going on in D.C. These elected officials are not representing the people, and they have to keep discord going. They want to get rid of President Donald Trump, so they have to keep discord going. I would not be surprised if they found out. I would be surprised if they really dig that deep, the Department of Justice. If they went and found out that these groups were being funded by a certain very rich left guy that wants this to explode. He wants nothing more than to have a civil disrest, a civil war in this nation. And I just wonder if they would, what would happen. If they would find out that Mr. J.S. was funding these groups, what would they do about it?
Well, they're not going to do anything about it.
There's rumors going around that
I said that for a very long time. If you're there and you're supporting this violence, I mean, if I went out there and tried to support some sort of violence, I'd be thrown in jail. And there was a little excerpt from this book that talks about how America the Beautiful has become America the Bizarre. How government openly defies the law. Christians are prosecuted as criminals. Children transition to the opposite sex. 130 million Americans depend on mind-altering substances just to get through life. I mean, it is bizarre. You have, and it is true. America's most cherished values are literally upside down to the point that madness is celebrated and normality is demonized. And,
they try to put the children on Ritalin and drugs in the elementary school age, and I know that maybe some of the listeners have had to do that with their children or did do that with their children. But they talk about the children having ADD, the inability to pay attention, to stay focused. It's attention deficit disorder, and sometimes it comes with a disorder of behavior as well. But that is just really, I know some children have more issues than others, but I raised 5 of them, and I'm going to tell you what, they were distracted all the time. They're kids.
Well,
they're distracted.
They're kids.
And the way they set up, and I have daughter-in-laws that are teachers. But the difference between how they set up a classroom now and how they set up a classroom when you and I were in school, at least when I was in school, it was more structured. It was more disciplined. And I don't mean discipline by spanking the children. I mean discipline by the order of how things were run. Mm-hmm. And it's not that way now. They want to make it more laid back. They want to make it more free. And when you do that, the children will become their own distraction. They will do other things. You can't, especially little boys, you can't give them an inch. They'll take a mile. I'm just telling you. That's the way my sons were. That's just the human nature of it. And it seems to me we failed as parents or as teachers because we know we no longer have control of these little kids. They're telling you what they're going to do. And next thing you know, we're going to have to put them on some kind of drug because they're out of control. Well, who's the real person out of control? It's the adult who can't seem to control a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old. And I'm speaking a little bit from experience. I know that my children were pretty much normal for the little boys that were constantly running and going. They never stopped. That's why I was thin when I was younger, because I was always running after them. But it goes on and on and on with the things that have happened in our nation that we can see. I mean, we've been all over the gamut here in just this short half hour that we've been on the air, talking about the violence and white supremacy and talking about the drugs and talking about the distractions and the things that they don't want us to talk about, like get the government out of health care. Get the government to do the right thing by our economy and give our currency some value. But they don't want to do that because that messes up the flow.
Well, they can't do it anymore because we're too deep. We're too deep. We're too deep in the things, and they will continue to strip every last breath and dollar they can out of the citizens of this country. So, until they feel they can get the last penny, it's going to be pretty much the same. It is all about the destruction of this country. It is about globalism. It is about the New World Order, the One World, the One World Order, New World Order. It is about, the globalization of religions and monetary policy and the globalizations of and you can't deny it. You can't deny it. It's real. And these are all, everything that we're experiencing is part of that. And it is, to get us, they had to lower our standard of living in this country. They've been successful at that. And I believe the last part of the plan will be to allow the monetary system to collapse, not just here, but worldwide. That truly brings us to one level. They will introduce, or they will try to introduce, the one world currency. They will try to introduce global government. I mean, a lot of that was part of the TPP. And that was the problem with TPP, it wasn't the trade, it wasn't about jobs, it was about the legislation and how these multinational corporations could sue and the laws that they would have to follow. And it was basically a globalist type legislation in that TPP. That was the dangerous part of that. That's the part they wanted secret. That's the part they didn't want anybody to know about. Yeah, we would have lost jobs and so forth and whatnot. I get that. But that wasn't the main part. That wasn't what was dangerous about the TPP. I mean, we still made trade agreements with Europe. I mean, that still went on. There, they didn't. You don't hear anybody talk about the trade agreement with Europe anymore. And so we have these issues, and I believe it's going to end when our monetary policy collapses. I'm not sure which comes first. Do we go to war first? Do we have war within this country first? Does the monetary system collapse first? All I know is, go ahead.
I was going to say, if we have to call in the military for domestic war, for a civil war, we're not going to have military for war with other countries such as North Korea. I mean, we're just absolutely doomed. I mean, we can't take on anymore. And of course, that's what the socialists want. They want us to fall. They want it to go down. And you're absolutely right. Jerry Brownfield, my predecessor, my mentor, he used to say all the time, they have to bring the United States down to the level of a third world country because they can't bring the third world countries up to the level of the United States. So they have to bring us down. And if you look around, particularly in rural America, if you look around, the county seats, I live right in a county seat, and I'm just cattywampus from the courthouse. And, that used to be the thriving part of a town, the county seat. And the buildings are just collapsing. They're just falling down because there's nothing left. The mom and pop shops are leaving, and you might have a barber shop here or there in town. You might have a little something, but everybody runs to Walmart in the big city. I mean, we're just 25 minutes from Jefferson City, the state capital. There's 2 mega Walmarts there. Kmart closed, Sears closed. A lot of the shops in the little Capitol Mall. I remember when that opened up several years ago, and now it just, Penny's is looking terrible. They just can't seem to compete with all the cheap stuff, like Ross's Dress for Less and Walmart and these other places. There's some other strip malls that have come up that have a few things, but you see those shops open, you see them close. Nothing seems to be able to thrive for very long. And, the big mega corporations, I remember when Walmart was a good thing. And now it seems to be, it's just killing America because the mom and pop shops cannot compete. And people will go for the cheaper because we almost have to because of the way things are with our currency. You have to do that. We're going into a break. I hear the music. Do you hear the music, Melody?
Yes, I do.
We've got a little bit of a delay. We're having a Monday here. We're definitely having a Monday. But it's not all bad. It's not all bad because we're talking through what's happening. What's happening in this nation? You got to look, read between the lines, and you got to see that entire forest. Don't just look at a tree here and a tree there. Your calls are welcome at 717-300-1218. That's 717-300-1218. And we will be right back.
You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com worldwide. Freedom is never free. We need your support today at FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a reestablished Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
We have returned. You're listening to Power Talk. The number to call is 717-300-1218. We've had I'm going to give that again. 717-300-1218. We're in the final segment of this morning's show. And I had to go grab some coffee. I think I didn't make it quite strong enough today. We've had quite the time with the phone lines. And Skype apparently is giving lots of people trouble across the globe. It's not just you and me it's picking on, Melody. So Melody's on a regular landline phone, and I'm on the Skype. And so we have a little bit of a delay, and we're having a little trouble communicating here. But we're so glad you're here with us this morning, and we're glad that we can talk through these issues that are happening today and distractions, because we want you to be informed with the truth, because there is power in the truth. And again, Melody, I want to emphasize Planned Parenthood was founded by Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was a well-known, made no bones about it, white supremacist. And the Democrat Party has embraced her, and they will not denounce Planned Parenthood. They will not defund Planned Parenthood. And it is one of the greatest sins of this nation, where we are willing to give up our children for ourselves. And, so when they start screaming white supremacy and they start yelling at Donald Trump and they start yelling at everyone else, they need to look at themselves because they're the ones that embrace and admire. Hillary Clinton says, I admire Margaret Sanger. Anyway, I wanted to remind people of that because you need to keep that in your mind. You need to remember that. These people are setting you up with lies and lies, what do I call it? Liberal lies that loathe. The liberal logic that lies and loathes America. And that's exactly what's going on.
And it's these lies, and it's these lies that allowed a woman to die this weekend. Because it is part of those lies that she believed that made her go there and be in the situation to where she lost her life. And, but, what is wrong with this country? Again, this snapping of the American mind where people are crying over the election. I mean, it's like, why can't they get over it and move on? It's only for 4 years, at the most 8. We had to put up with, some, strange presidents in the past. But, but it is sad because it is these views and these thoughts that have gotten us to this position. And this young woman, there was reports where she cried in her bedroom after the election. She would cry at work because of the social injustice that she thought was going on, and it's like when I was in my 20s, we had the Vietnam War, but that was real. I mean, that was real.
It was very real. And I had a brother in that. My brother is a Marine, and he went to Vietnam, and he is now a disabled vet. He's my hero.
Yes.
And I see what he's going through. He took care of my mother as she was dying with Alzheimer's, and he wouldn't put her in a nursing home. He kept her. He watched his wife die of brain cancer, same kind of cancer that McCain has, and he took care of her while he himself was disabled. And, I'm getting teared up. These Vietnam vets, they didn't get a good shake when they came back. We shouldn't have been in Vietnam, but they went and they answered the call, and then they came back and people spit on them and they did all kinds of crazy things, and they still get respect. And then to watch this crazy people that are pushing socialism in this nation, and these whining, crying babies who can't put up with life in general, and Judd that stands up there to be a strong, nasty woman, and then she can't take it when somebody tells her she looks nice today. I'm kind of like it when somebody tells me I look nice. but
yeah, I mean, it is.
We're just,
they call
we're
it,
in a nation of craziness.
I read a comment, social justice. I mean, it is just being politically correct, and that's what these kids, these people, it's all about being politically correct. And I saw an earlier comment today where being all social justice is a politically correct, a more acceptable terminology for the Marxist-Leninist doctrine. And it's a term that is being used by people who haven't lived, and they're just being, again, brainwashed. And I don't understand how they can't see this. How do they fall under how do they fall under this so quickly, so easily, so strongly, that they can't see anything else?
They first of all, they're spoiled. They were raised by baby boomers. They're spoiled.
Yeah, true.
And I'm not putting people down that chose not to have large families. I'm not at all. But you see less and less large. You have less and less large families. And when I had my large family, I was looked down on. That people made comments. But my kids are a lot more well-adjusted than a lot of the children that were putting me down. Their kids ended up into trouble with drugs and some other things. And, my kids, they learned how life is not fair. They learned that pretty quick. And they learned responsibility. They had chores. They had lists. One of my daughter-in-law says her husband, my son, doesn't like lists. I said, because I always had a list for him. So he said, if I don't know what needs to be done, don't put it on a list. He said, I know what needs to be done. But, they were raised pretty strict. But yet they were allowed to be boys. They were out playing and fighting and carrying on and doing what little boys do. And they played football, they played baseball, they ran track, and they sang in all the special choirs and were in all the music events in school. And they were well-rounded. They didn't want to do their homework. I had to make them do their homework. We've got a generation of people that are spoiled, and so they think life is unfair, and they want to try and make it fair. And that's just never going to happen. You can't legislate common sense, and you can't legislate fairness. That's a socialistic lie that these young people are being sold a bill of goods. Free college, that's not going to happen. The government's making money off of your loans. They're never going to give you free college. But,
we're in debt,
they don't
too.
understand.
There's no money to give them any free loans. There's nothing free in this world. That was one of the first things that was, brainwashed into me. There's no free lunch in this world. Get out there and work and make a life.
I've always wondered if that higher education was absolutely so important, why don't they just add a couple of grades to the high school? Why don't they just add 2 years to your high school? Or why don't they quit giving them the summers off? Now, I'm not saying they should do all this, but if it was really that vitally important, why don't they make it part of the public school system? Of course, we know what they've done to the public school system. I'm just throwing it out there because I think that it's just absurd what they're telling these kids. You have to do this, and I read where McDonald's now is they're putting in the robots, and I said, well, this is the power of your forced minimum wage. So these kids are not going to have jobs, or the elderly. You see a lot of the retired people working at McDonald's and Walmart and stuff now, trying to get part-time jobs, and those jobs are going to be gone because they can't pay you $15 an hour to flip a burger or to say, do you want fries with that? Or supersize it. And so they're going to go with robots. Robots are more efficient. They show up on time. Teenagers don't always show up on time.
And there's the music, Beth.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. I think our producer's just trying to get us off the air quickly today. Well, it's been a Monday, Melody. It's been a Monday.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.